Hello, and thank you for joining us. We begin our report on the final day before Election Day 2024. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are making their final push in a race that will likely be decided by voters in a few key battleground states. According to the University of Florida's election lab, more than 80 million people have already voted earlier by mail. That's more than half of the 158 million people who voted in the 2020 race. On Monday, Trump is making stops in the key states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and North Carolina, where he gave his assessment of the state of the race.
They have an expression, I hate the expression actually, but it's ours to lose. Does that make sense to you? It's ours to lose. If we get everybody out and vote, there's not a thing they can do. Here's my only purpose in even being here today. Get out and vote. You know that.
Meanwhile, Harris is going all in on Pennsylvania Monday. She's crisscrossing the state in hopes of claiming its 19 electoral college votes.
One more day left in one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime, and momentum is on our side. Momentum is on our side.
CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang and CBS News political correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns join us now. Thank you both so much for being here. Weijia, you've been following the Harris campaign. What are you seeing and hearing in this final day of campaigning?
Well, Lindsay, it is all about the turnout, which is exactly why the vice president is ending her campaigning with two massive concert rallies, one in Pittsburgh and one right here in Philadelphia, which marks the spot for her last event. And it's drawing artists like Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin, not in an effort to persuade anybody, but to really drum up the enthusiasm so that her supporters are energized and perhaps, convince someone else tomorrow, a family member or a friend, to get to the polls and vote, because that is such a key part of her strategy to make sure that her supporters turn out. And here in Philly, since 2020, the data shows that there are about 55,000 fewer registered Democrats. And so they've really had to think about where they can pick up some extra votes to match the 80,000 votes that Biden beat Trump by in 2020. And that's why her team has been really focusing, too, on the suburbs, especially here in Philadelphia, to try to drive up those numbers. But, Lindsay, it's really iconic that she chose this landmark behind me to hold her last event, because these are world known. These are the steps of the Museum of Art, also known as the Rocky Steps, that symbolize the rise of an underdog. And since day one, Harris said that's exactly what she is in this race. So this is a final push to try to end on a high note, on a positive note. In fact, she has not mentioned Donald Trump in her rallies today in other parts of Pennsylvania. Again, all in an effort just to get her supporters out to the polls tomorrow. Lindsay.
Caitlin, tell us what you're seeing from the Trump campaign in these final hours.
Well, Lindsay, it's kind of hard to believe, but nearly a decade of Trump rallies is coming to a close tonight. Trump is 78 years old. He said that he is not going to run for president again. So this, where we are in Grand Rapids, where he will finish tonight, is going to be the last rally as a presidential candidate. And he's been very nostalgic over the past several days. We've been covering him all over these battleground states. He's been nostalgic about the MAGA movement, but he's also been off message in these final precious hours of the campaign. He's been airing grievances and going off script, as his campaign has wanted him to really focus on the two issues that have been fueling his support in the battlegrounds, and that is the economy and immigration. Now, we are just hearing from the campaign that momentarily, when he takes the stage in Pittsburgh, where he's hosting his second to last rally, he is going to make his final closing argument of the campaign there. And we just got some excerpts, Lindsay, and this really stands out. He's going to say, a vote for Trump means your groceries will be cheaper, your paychecks will be higher, your streets will be safer, your communities will be richer, and your future will be brighter than ever before. Now, this is kind of a different message than what he has been saying over the past few days. He's been kind of painting a very dark picture of America, really leaning into dark immigration rhetoric that has really been the focus of his campaign, not only this time around, but the previous two as well. But there is significance here in Grand Rapids, Lindsay. He ended his past two presidential campaigns in 2016 and 2020 right here in Grand Rapids, and he is going to do so again tonight. And the feeling here, as you can see behind me, he's not going to take the stage until maybe nearly midnight, and people have already been here waiting for the last chance to see him as a presidential candidate. And just to tell you, Lindsay, this has been a remarkable near decade. I remember covering Trump's first ever rally as a presidential candidate in New Hampshire in 2015. We have been traveling with him all over the country this year. So he's ending here tonight in Michigan, a key battleground state, one that he hopes to flip after losing it in 2020 and winning it in 2016. We'll see what tonight's rally does, but this is really kind of a homecoming for him before he heads back home to Palm Beach, where he will vote tomorrow morning. Lindsay.
Caitlin Huey-Burns and Weijia Jiang, thank you both so much. For more analysis on the race, CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Edo Keef joins us now in Studio 57. So, Ed, based on what you're seeing, your experience covering campaigns, first of all, are empty seats the day before an election at rallies significant? And what really moves the needle in the final hours?
It's notable, but remember, he's held several rallies in North Carolina just in the last several days. So if you didn't give enough warning, or maybe the most devoted already got to see him, it's perhaps not surprising. But it's a signal that they're worried about what's going on in the Tar Heel state so much that he had to come so many times, despite the fact he'd been leading. So that may be a tell for us here in the closing hours. The fact that the vice president is spending all day in Pennsylvania is another tell. She needs those 19 electoral votes because there's a possibility that one of the other so-called blue wall, big Midwestern states, Wisconsin or Michigan, doesn't break her way. Or perhaps she can't pick up North Carolina as she's trying, or Georgia, or something doesn't go right in the Sun Belt. But if you get the biggest prize, the 19 of the battleground, you're on your way most likely because you're robbing the other one of their potential win.
The former president already working to discredit the election results if he should lose. He also said this about the 2020 race on Sunday. Let's listen.
We had the safest border in the history of our country the day that I left. I shouldn't have left. I mean, honestly, because we did so well.
I mean, does that play to his base? Does he risk losing undecideds? I'm assuming some of them are still out there, maybe?
Yeah. Well, look, first of all, he's been sowing doubt about this election for more than a year. Right? This isn't a new thing.
Right.
He's been harping on the last one ever since it was held. So it has been a part of appealing to a base that agrees with him. Will it be enough to win over those undecided voters in the final hours? I'd be surprised if it did, because if you're someone who agrees with him, you've probably been on board for a lot longer than just the last 12 hours or so. What I think we've heard consistently from voters is that they want to hear from both of them about what are you going to do for me regarding the economy, regarding border security and immigration? Where are you on the issue of abortion services? So, you know, that isn't necessarily what's going to do. What he wants to do, though, is make sure, as Libby was telling us, that his supporters are doing everything they can, including if they have to, crawling to the polls. And so by saying that kind of stuff, it may be reinforcing the hope that the base is showing up.
Let's talk about something really interesting that's happening in Iowa. A Des Moines Register poll showing Harris ahead of Trump. I mean, it's within the margin of error. But what do you take away from this? I mean, even if within that margin of error, Trump ekes out ahead, is it foreboding of other states?
It could be. And this has been one of the big mysteries of this cycle. We've never had an election where this fundamental right has been taken away from a large group of voters. In this case, a woman's right or ability to go get abortion services should she need to. We've seen it play out in statewide races. It's been a factor in some congressional races, but never in a presidential. Are we going to see women across the country respond in some way to this by taking it out on Trump or taking it out on other Republican candidates who agree with him? We'll have to wait and see. Regardless of the accuracy of the poll, what it signals is that even in deep red states, there are voters concerned about this, there are women concerned about this, and they're going to do what they can to cast votes potentially against him or against Republicans. If she wins Iowa, then it signals something so much bigger that we weren't anticipating. We'll have to wait and see. But it is one of the big mysteries to watch tomorrow night.
Ed O'Keefe, you and I are going to be sharing this desk tomorrow, 4 p.m. to 6:30 Eastern with our friend Vlad Dutier. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
See you then.
Let's go now to CBS News Deputy Director of Elections and Data Analytics, Kabir Khanna, for a check-in on our data desk. Kabir, good to see you. So you've mapped out two scenarios for how Trump and Harris can pull out the win in battleground states. What do their potential paths look like?
That's right, Lindsay. So in our baseline estimates, these 7 battleground states in white are very tight. They're all within 2 points, each of the margins for either side. So instead of just shrug and say, well, they're all within the margin of error, we decided to map out what campaign dynamics might do to break segments of the electorate certain ways. Let's look at the first scenario. What we've seen is that in several of these states, there's a group of low propensity voters, folks who didn't turn out 4 years ago, who are predominantly male and leaning Trump's way. In states like Arizona and Pennsylvania, for example, juicing up the turnout of that group would definitely benefit Donald Trump's vote margins. So we tweaked the parameters of our baseline model to look at that scenario, and what we found was that Trump wins the majority of the battleground states, ending up with over the 270 electoral votes he would need to retake the presidency. We looked at one other scenario, and this has to do with what the Harris campaign is trying to do. They are deploying messengers like moderate Republicans to try to peel off Trump supporters from 4 years ago. That group is predominantly women. It's the type of voter who might have backed Nikki Haley in the GOP primaries even after Trump had clinched the nomination. So in the second scenario, we said, what if Kamala Harris is able to persuade just 7% of Trump's 2020 voters to flip and vote for her this year? Here's what that looks like. Kamala Harris ends up winning the lion's share of the battlegrounds. She holds the blue wall in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. She holds Georgia, and she would even have a chance of flipping North Carolina here. She would end up with over 300 electoral votes, a comfortable victory in the Electoral College, Lindsay.
Two interesting possible paths. What insights do we have into how Pennsylvania is voting, given the campaign's focus there?
So let me show you one thing about Pennsylvania. This is the party registration of people who have voted so far. These are male voters. This is not how they voted, as in which candidate, but it's which party that they're registered with. What our models indicate based on this break is that Democrats are banking a sizable lead in the by-mail vote in that state. What our models also indicate is that there are plenty of likely registered Republican voters poised to turn out tomorrow itself. So what I want to urge people when they watch the results tomorrow night is to not get too excited or too depressed if you see one candidate with a big lead in the tabulated vote. That is likely to happen, particularly if, for example, it's the mail votes that get reported first. At the CBS Data Desk, what we're doing is putting the pieces of the puzzle together. We will tell you our race rating of the race once all the votes have been counted. And if you tune into CBS, you'll see our live models breaking down what we know as we know it tomorrow night.
Well, that tease just wrote itself. Kabir Khanna, thank you so much. Looking forward to that. Of course, you can watch Election Night with the CBS News team live from our election headquarters in New York and with our team spread out across the country. Join us for real-time results. The analysis Kabir was just talking about and exclusive polling. Coverage starts at 4 p.m. Eastern here on CBS News 24/7 and continues at 7 p.m. Eastern on CBS.